election along with presidential candidate Jill Stein. Last but not least is our managing editor, Bruce Dixon. Longtime activist, habitual troublemaker and incorrigible activist, Bruce Dixon has been comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable since 1968. As a rank and file member of the Black Panther Party from 1969 to 1970, he was also a rank and file union activist in a string of factories, plants, and workshops, mostly in Chicago. Bruce currently resides in Marietta, Georgia, and is a member of the Georgia State Committee of the Green Party. So welcome, our last.
Thank you, Nellie, and thank you all the members of this table from the Black Agenda Report. Thank all of you for packing into this room and bearing with us in this heat. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be here this afternoon, to be on this platform. I'm so grateful that Black Agenda Report allowed me to be a part of this, since I'm not as disciplined as my colleagues in terms of their ability to write on a regular basis and get those articles out. I've been somewhat remiss, tardy, and just irresponsible for the last year or so, but I've been doing a few little things, so I give myself a little excuse. The one thing that I'm going to talk about, and I won't be long because we have, I think, made the sufficient points, and we do want to get to a point where we can have some dialogue in this room this afternoon. But the one thing I want to say that I think distinguishes the politics of Black Agenda Report and the politics of the Black liberation movement that we're all a part of is the fact that we start from one very simple baseline position. And that is that we have to have in this country revolutionary change. We start from that basic position that we are a captured people, that we are part of a prison house of nations, that we are captive here in a settler colonial state, and that our responsibility is to not only struggle against this particular state, but to be in solidarity, fundamental solidarity, with all oppressed people throughout the entire world. So we start from that position, that we have to have revolutionary change. And when you start from that position, then everything else, every other political question, are questions of strategy and tactics, including how we relate to and participate in the electoral process. For many of us, participating in the electoral arena is part of that process of building movement, building popular power. Is part of that process that allows us to engage the people, to transform consciousness. So for us, that is the thrust of the electoral process. We say, well, why the Democrats we are concerned with? Well, as many of, or all of the speakers have said, it is the Democratic Party that's been the main impediment for us developing the kind of radical oppositional politics and consciousness that we have to build. We understand where the Republicans come from, and we know that most of the people in our communities understand where the Republicans are coming from and their social base. But it's been the Democrat Party that's been the source of ideological confusion. It's been the source of us not being able to move the masses of our people away from pure reformism to the kind of radical politics that was developing in the 1960s and the 1970s. As many of you know, that one of the consequences of the repression in the 1970s was that it helped to split off the Black Liberation Movement from the emerging motion that was put in place by the Civil Rights Movement and the emergence of this expanded black petty bourgeoisie. That when they began to target the Black Liberation Movement, at the same time they propped up this emerging element. These were the elements that basically decided that they were going to enter into the electoral process. They're the ones that ended up taking over these mayorships in various cities. They're the ones that aligned themselves with the U.S. state. They're the ones that called for direct intervention in black communities in the 1980s as part of the so-called war on drugs. They're the ones that encouraged Nixon to take up that slogan back in the 70s before that. They're the ones that were the base of the support as the Democratic Party veered even more dramatically to the right in the 1990s. So it's this element that today we see has jettisoned any pretext of being progressive and are now in complete and in total alignment with the most right-wing expressions of the Democratic Party. They're the ones that, as Glenn and everybody has talked about, are now openly talking about Russia and Russian-gate, and not speaking to, in any kind of way, the objective realities and needs of our people in this country and oppressed people around the world. That is why they, in fact, become the target. We can't move our people to a progressive place as long as that element continues to have some degree of ideological legitimacy. We have a number of very, I think, clear objectives. We have to look at the ideological component in terms of people understanding what it is we're up against and where we need to go. You know, last night our dear sister talked about the fact that if you approach most people in this country and you ask them to define a term like neoliberalism, then most people wouldn't understand or wouldn't be able to define that. She's probably right. But what does that really mean? You know, we hear people talk about we need to start from where the people are at, okay? And we're all for that. But why is it in 2017, even among progressives in many cases, even among our organizations and our organizational work, we don't have people who can understand and can define what neoliberalism might be or is. When you look at a place, for example, where I spend a lot of my time, in Colombia, for example, I would challenge you to go up to 10 people and ask them, 10 regular people, and ask them if they can define neoliberalism, and I would bet you at least 6 can. Now, what's the difference? The difference, my friends, is that in those political contexts, people are serious about ideological struggle. They're serious about political education. They understand and believe that people can think for themselves. Okay? And so we don't dumb down materials. We don't talk down the people. We engage in serious political education. Now, my point is that that is exactly what we have not been doing very effectively here in this country. That basically, if we don't have a general understanding of neoliberalism with the impact that it has on all of our lives, then that's a reflection of our own contradictions, in my opinion. Okay? So we have this ideological challenge. We have a political challenge in terms of now we've got to build and have an opportunity to build new and more powerful structures. Okay? With people coming out of their relative stupor after 8 years of being in this fog, we have a chance now to really begin to build new mass movements. We have a programmatic challenge. That is, what is it that we need to begin to focus in on that can really sharpen the contradictions, that can really sharpen the crisis that the bourgeoisie is involved in right now? I say that one programmatic position, that one political position we should be trying to exploit is the need on the part of the bourgeoisie to use the weapon of war to advance its interests. Now is the time for us to revive a powerful anti-war movement here in this country. It is also the time, my friends, to connect that anti-war sentiment with a more clear, explicit, deep understanding of imperialism. That movement has to be anti-imperialist also. We see the consequence of the confusion among our ranks when it comes to when states are in the crosshairs of U.S. imperialism. You know, most of us in this room have been around long enough that basically when a state was in the crosshair of U.S. imperialism, we stood with that particular state. Despite whatever issues or contradictions we may have identified in that particular state. The very fact that they are in the crosshairs of U.S. imperialism suggests that maybe something they're doing is correct. Because we know from the history of this country that the U.S. has never been on the side of the people. So why the confusion today? We understand that we are here in an oppressive state. And despite, again, the contradictions, we're looking at oppressed nations. And that if you don't stand with that oppressed nation, then basically you are objectively aligning yourself with U.S. imperialism. That is backward. We have to reject that. We say that this issue of war has to be the main issue. We have to link that issue of war and anti-imperialism with the issue of domestic repression. That basically, for us as we organize, we can't just organize the anti-war and anti-imperialist component. We've got to connect that to the fact that we're up against a repressive state that's involved in the systematic repression of any of us and all of us who are about trying to advance a progressive agenda. Okay? So this is the time for us to begin to rebuild this anti-war, anti-imperialist, pro-peace movement. But we understand that, you know, without justice, there will be no peace. And so we have to be prepared to engage in a struggle, a fierce struggle. But we have the conditions and we have the times with us today. All we need now is the will, the courage to, in fact, do what needs to be done. And now's the time to do it.